Studio lights looked warm as usual, but there was something invisible on the studio. Patience. Bill Maher smiled as if he were about to ask an easy question. Meghan Markle smiled back, at the cameras, at the audience, even at Bill. But behind that smile was a flash of anger, brief enough to fit into a single sentence. And Bill seemed to sense it. Because tonight, the issue wasn't royalty. The issue was something no one dared to say aloud. And soon, when Meghan's eyes briefly averted the camera, everyone would realize this wasn't just an interview. The set looked like every late-night studio in America. Clean lines, soft light, city skyline glittering behind glass like a promise you didn't fully trust. Two chairs faced each other on a circular blue rug. No desk to hide behind, no panel to dilute tension. Just distance, posture, and the thin, invisible cord of politeness stretched between them. Meghan Markle sat with one leg crossed over the other, spine straight, hands loosely folded on her lap. She looked composed in that way that wasn't quite relaxed, more like practiced. The kind of calm you see in someone who's learned to smile under pressure because the alternative gets headlines. Bill Maher sat opposite her, leaning forward slightly, fingers interlaced, a half smirk resting on his face, as if the entire world was one long punchline, and he'd simply chosen to be the one holding the microphone. The applause faded, the warm intro music died, and for a beat, one quiet beat, the studio felt too still, not awkward, charged. Bill didn't start with the obvious. That was the first surprise. "Meghan," he said, voice casual, almost friendly. "Thank you for being here." She gave a small nod. "Thank you for having me." It sounded polite. It was. But her eyes stayed very still, as if she didn't want to blink first. Bill's smile widened. "You're used to people talking about you. You've been turned into, I don't know, a symbol, a Rorschach test. People see what they want to see." Meghan's mouth tightened barely. "That's not new for women in public life." "No," Bill agreed, and for a second his tone softened. "But in your case, it became global." Meghan held his gaze, and the camera caught something small but telling, her fingers pressing together a little harder. Not nervous, controlled. Bill continued like he was walking through a room filled with glass. "I'm not here to do the whole royal thing all night. You've answered those questions. I get it." Meghan's shoulders relaxed by a millimeter, just enough to suggest she'd braced for impact and hadn't felt it yet. "But," Bill added, and the word hung in the air like a pin poised above a balloon, "I am interested in something else." Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Go on." Bill's hands opened, palms up, a harmless gesture. This idea that modern culture is, how do I put it, addicted to narratives, not facts, narratives. Meghan didn't move, but the studio felt her attention sharpen. Bill nodded as if he'd just introduced the theme of a documentary. "And I think you've become one of the biggest narratives of our time." Meghan's smile reappeared, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "That's a very loaded way to describe a person." Bill chuckled. "It's not an insult, it's reality. You're a headline with a heartbeat." A few audience members laughed, softly. Meghan didn't. She tilted her head. "If I'm a narrative, it's because people decided to write me that way." Bill's eyes glinted. "Sure, but you also publish it. You tell it. You repeat it. You refine it." The warmth in the room shifted. Not dramatically, not yet. But, like a thermostat, quietly turning down. Meghan's voice stayed smooth. "I share my truth. If that bothers people, that says more about them than it does about me." Bill nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that exact sentence. "Okay, let's sit with that. My truth." Meghan's jaw flexed once. It was subtle, almost invisible. But the camera caught it, because cameras always catch the wrong things at the right time. Bill leaned back, comfortable. "When you say my truth, do you mean the truth as you experienced it, or do you mean the truth that validates you?" There it was, the first needle, not a stab, not an attack, just a clean, quiet question, sharp enough to draw attention. Meghan blinked once, slowly. She didn't answer immediately. That pause lasted a fraction longer than normal, but on television, fractions feel like minutes. "I mean the truth as I experienced it," she said finally, voice a touch colder. And it's interesting that you're already trying to frame it as validation. Bill's smile didn't fade. I'm not trying, I'm asking. Meghan's eyes flashed, quick, controlled, and gone. Sometimes questions are frames. The audience reacted with a ripple of, ooh, more sensed than heard. Bill shrugged, still casual. Fair. But then again, sometimes people call it framing when they don't like where the question leads. Meghan's posture didn't change, but the air did. She leaned forward slightly, just enough to shorten the distance between them. Let's be clear. I didn't come here to be a case study in culture wars. I came here to talk about my work. Bill nodded. Great, we will. But your work and your story are intertwined. That's not my opinion. That's your brand. The word brand landed heavier than it should have. It shouldn't be a weapon. But in that moment, it sounded like one. Meghan's smile hardened. My brand? She repeated softly. Is that what you call advocacy now? Bill held up a hand like he was calming a room that wasn't yet loud. I'm not saying advocacy is branding. I'm saying in 2025, everything becomes marketing, even sincerity. Meghan's eyes locked onto his. That's a very cynical worldview. Bill grinned. I host a show. Cynicism is part of the job. Meghan let out a quick breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. And I suppose compassion isn't. Bill's eyebrows lifted. See, now we're getting somewhere. Meghan's fingers moved to adjust the cuff of her blouse. A small gesture, but it looked like armor being tightened. Bill leaned in again, voice steady, friendly, dangerous in its calm. Here's what fascinates me. You say you want privacy, but you produce content about your life. You say you want peace, but you engage in battles. You say you want to move on, but you keep revisiting. Meghan's expression didn't crack, but something in her eyes sharpened like glass catching light. You're doing that thing again, she said. Bill tilted his head. What thing? You're turning a person into a contradiction for entertainment. Bill didn't flinch. Is it entertainment or is it accountability? The audience murmured. Meghan sat back, slow, controlled. But now the calm looked less like poise and more like restraint. She spoke carefully. Accountability for what, exactly? For speaking? For existing? Bill's voice stayed measured. For monetizing grievance. Silence. Not total, but enough. Meghan's face went very still. Her eyes didn't blink. And that's when the studio realized something important. This wasn't going to be one of those interviews where the guest laughs politely, plugs a project, and leaves to applause. Because Bill Maher hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted her. He'd simply said one sentence that forced a choice. Meghan could deflect, or she could fight. She chose a third option, something calmer, sharper, and more dangerous. She smiled. Bill, she said softly, you're very comfortable calling a woman's pain grievance. Bill's smile thinned. I'm comfortable calling anyone's pain a business model if they sell it. Meghan held that smile for a heartbeat longer than it should have lasted. Then she looked past him, toward the skyline backdrop, toward the lights, toward the camera. And for the first time, her voice carried a hint of something that wasn't rehearsed. Then maybe, she said, you should ask yourself why people like you keep buying it. Bill's eyes flickered. Not anger, not fear, something else. Interest. Like a chess player who just watched an opponent move a piece in a way that promised the game was about to get ugly. He nodded once. Okay, he said quietly. Let's talk about who's buying what. Meghan's smile faded, her jaw set. And somewhere off camera, a producer shifted in their seat. Not because anything had exploded, but because the fuse had just been lit, and nobody could see how long it was. Not yet. The moment Bill said, let's talk about who's buying what, the temperature in the studio dropped. Not dramatically, not visibly, but enough that everyone felt it. Even the city lights behind the glass seemed colder somehow, sharper, less forgiving. Meghan didn't respond right away. That silence wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. She uncrossed her legs and crossed them again, slower this time, reclaiming space. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath it now. You keep using words like selling and buying, she said, as if telling your story automatically cheapens it. Bill nodded once, eyes never leaving her face. Not automatically, repeatedly. A ripple moved through the audience. Not applause, not laughter, just awareness. Meghan's lips curved slightly. Interesting, because when men write memoirs, they're brave. When women speak out, it's monetization. Bill didn't rush to answer. He leaned back, folding one leg over the other, giving her the space to finish. That restraint made her words feel louder. I stepped away from an institution that thrives on silence, she continued. I chose transparency, and somehow that's become a crime. Bill exhaled through his nose, half a laugh. No one said crime, I said pattern. Meghan's eyes flashed. Patterns exist because systems do. Bill tilted his head. Sure, but systems don't force Netflix deals. There it was, the second needle, deeper this time. Meghan leaned forward, her voice sharpening. So, now we're pretending you wouldn't take one? Bill smiled, unbothered. I already did. I just don't claim it's therapy. A few audience members laughed. This time, Meghan heard it. Her shoulders stiffened. That's a cheap line. Bill raised an eyebrow. Was it wrong? Meghan straightened fully now. Gone was the soft diplomacy. This was her public voice, measured, assertive, practiced under fire. What you're doing, she said, is trivializing trauma because it makes you uncomfortable. Bill shook his head. No, I'm questioning how it's presented. Meghan scoffed softly. By who? By you? Bill didn't miss a beat. By someone who doesn't benefit from the monarchy or from attacking it. That landed harder than he intended, or maybe exactly as intended. Meghan's eyes narrowed. You think this is about benefits? I think, Bill said carefully, that outrage has become currency, and some people are very good at spending it. For the first time, Meghan interrupted him. That's rich, she snapped, coming from a man who's built a career poking at other people's lives from a safe distance. The audience gasped, quietly but unmistakably. Bill didn't flinch, but his smile faded, just a touch. I never claimed to be a victim, he said. That's the difference? Meghan laughed, once sharply. You just claim to be above it. Bill leaned forward now, mirroring her posture. No, I claim to be honest. The space between them shrank. Not physically, but rhetorically. The exchange was no longer philosophical. It was personal. Meghan's voice dropped. Honest or detached? Bill met her stare. Detached enough to ask questions without crying foul. Meghan's hand moved, palm open. So, empathy is foul now? Bill replied instantly. Empathy without self-reflection is indulgence. The audience reaction was louder this time. A murmur rolled through the studio like distant thunder. Meghan's composure cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but visible if you knew where to look. Her breath quickened. She spoke faster now. You sit here, she said, comfortable, wealthy, untouched by tabloids that dissect your body, your marriage, your motherhood. Bill interrupted her, gently but firmly. I've been sued, fired, protested, canceled, and threatened. Meghan waved that away. That's not the same. Bill's eyes hardened. Pain isn't a competition. She froze. For half a second, Meghan looked like she might say something she couldn't take back. The camera caught her swallowing, resetting. She softened her tone, but it felt forced. You don't get to define my experience. Bill nodded. True, but I do get to question how it's packaged. Meghan's smile returned, but now it was brittle. You're obsessed with packaging. Bill shrugged. Because the wrapping keeps changing, but the gift stays the same. Meghan leaned back, arms crossing loosely. Not defensive, but closed. And what gift is that, Bill? He held her gaze. Victimhood with a production budget. The studio went silent. Even the city lights seemed to dim. Meghan's eyes flicked briefly to the side, toward the producers, the cameras, the invisible audience beyond the room, then back to Bill. That's cruel, she said quietly. Bill didn't raise his voice. That made it worse. Cruelty is using suffering as armor. Meghan stood still in her chair, jaw tight. You don't know what I've lost. Bill nodded once. No, but I know what you've gained. That was it. The line between debate and confrontation vanished. Meghan leaned forward abruptly. "You think this is a game?" Bill's voice stayed level. "I think it's a performance." Her eyes burned now. "Then stop watching." Bill's lips pressed together in something close to a smile, but not kind. "I can't. You keep selling tickets." The audience reacted sharply, some applause, some shock, some discomfort. The producer's voice crackled faintly in Bill's earpiece, urging caution. But it was too late. Meghan's hands unclenched slowly. Her voice lowered, dangerous in its calm. "You think you're brave for saying this?" she said. "But you're just another man dismissing a woman because she won't suffer quietly." Bill answered without hesitation. "And you're just another powerful person pretending criticism is oppression." The room felt like it might fracture. Meghan stared at him, breathing hard now. "You invited me here to humiliate me." Bill shook his head. "No, I invited you here to talk." Her laugh was bitter. "This isn't a conversation, it's an ambush." Bill leaned back, folding his hands. "Only if you expected applause." That sentence lingered, heavy and unavoidable. Meghan looked down for the briefest moment, then back up, eyes blazing. "You know what?" she said. "I don't need this." Bill raised an eyebrow. "Need what?" "This smug little exercise where you pretend neutrality while sharpening knives." Bill's voice softened, not apologetic, but calm. "If questions feel like knives, maybe the story is thinner than you think." Meghan inhaled sharply. Her leg bounced once, betraying the control she'd fought to maintain. The audience could feel it now. This wasn't simmering anymore. It was boiling. And as the red light above the camera blinked, still rolling, still watching, everyone in that studio knew one thing for certain. This was no longer about ideas. It was about endurance. And someone, sooner rather than later, was going to stand up. The silence after Bill's last sentence wasn't empty. It was crowded with every unsaid thought, every camera angle waiting to tighten, every producer holding their breath behind the glass. Meghan didn't move. Yeah, neither did Bill. The city lights behind them glowed like witnesses who had seen this kind of thing before and knew how it usually ended. Bill was the first to speak again, but not to attack. "Let's reset," he said evenly, "because this doesn't have to be a fight." Meghan laughed under her breath. "You crossed that bridge about 10 minutes ago." Bill nodded once. "Fair. Then let's be honest." Her eyes flicked up. "Finally." Bill leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees. His tone shifted, less sharp, more surgical. "You say you want to be heard. I believe that. But you also want to control how you're questioned, and those two things don't coexist." Meghan's fingers tightened together. "I want respect." Bill met her gaze. "Respect doesn't mean immunity." The audience murmured again, not loud, just enough. Meghan turned slightly in her chair, angling her body away from him, not retreating, repositioning. "You're framing this as if I walked in here demanding praise," she said. "I didn't. I came to talk about the impact of public scrutiny on mental health." Bill nodded. "And then you monetized it." Her head snapped back toward him. "There it is again." "Because it matters," Bill replied. "If you're going to be the face of a cause, people will question the business model." Meghan's voice hardened. "So now compassion needs a disclaimer?" Bill replied calmly. "No. Influence does." She shook her head slowly. "You're obsessed with power." Bill smiled faintly. "Only when it pretends to be powerless." That line cut deep. The audience felt it. Meghan felt it more. "You have no idea what it's like," she said, voice rising despite herself, "to have every word dissected, every breath weaponized." Bill didn't argue. "I know what it's like to be criticized." "That's not the same," Meghan shot back. Bill raised a finger slightly, not accusatory, just precise. "No, but neither is being a duchess." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Meghan's eyes darkened. "You don't get to use my title like a punchline." Bill's expression didn't change. "Then stop using it as a shield." The producer's voice crackled again in Bill's ear. "Careful." But the train had left the station. Meghan leaned forward now, both hands braced on her knees. "You think I enjoy this?" Bill shrugged. I think you're very good at it. Her voice dropped, dangerous. You're reducing my life to optics. Bill answered just as quietly. You're presenting it that way. The audience shifted. Someone whispered, "Oh, wow." Another laughed nervously, then stopped. Meghan straightened, smoothing the front of her jacket with deliberate control. "Let me ask you something, Bill." He nodded. "Go ahead. Do you think people should stay silent when institutions harm them?" Bill didn't hesitate. "No." "Then why am I punished for speaking?" Bill held her gaze. "You're not punished for speaking. You're questioned for profiting." Her jaw clenched. "So, the rule is, speak, but don't succeed." Bill shook his head. "Speak, but don't pretend success equals moral authority." That one stung. Meghan's breath quickened. She tried to mask it with a smile, but it came out tight. "You're projecting," she said. "You resent people who don't play by your rules." Bill replied, "I resent people who rewrite the rules while demanding applause." The audience reacted again, this time split. Some clapped, others sat rigid, uncomfortable. Meghan gestured toward the crowd. "You hear that? This is what happens when nuance gets replaced by cynicism." Bill followed her gesture with his eyes, then looked back at her. "This is what happens when criticism gets labeled cruelty." She scoffed. "You call this criticism?" Bill nodded. "Yes." Meghan shook her head, disbelief etched across her face. "You've spent the last 20 minutes questioning my integrity." Bill corrected her gently. "I questioned your framing." She laughed sharply. "That's semantics." Bill smiled thinly. "So is my truth." That did it. Meghan's composure cracked, not shattered, but bent. Her voice rose, controlled but shaking at the edges. "You don't get to mock language that people use to survive." Bill leaned back, hands open. "I'm not mocking survival. I'm mocking sanctimony." The room went quiet again. Meghan stared at him, eyes glassy now, not with tears, but fury. "You think you're smarter than this?" Bill's reply was soft. "I think I'm less invested in being liked." The audience laughed, this time louder. Meghan heard it, and something inside her shifted. "You invited me here," she said slowly. "Not to listen, but to perform." Bill shook his head. "I invited you here to answer." Her voice sharpened. "On your terms." Bill met her stare. "On realities." She leaned back, folding her arms tightly across her chest now. This wasn't posture anymore. It was armor. "You know what your problem is?" she said. Bill waited. "You mistake detachment for wisdom." Bill replied, "And you mistake emotion for evidence." The words hung between them, heavy and immovable. Meghan exhaled through her nose, eyes flicking briefly to the cameras, then back to Bill. "This is exactly why people don't trust men like you," she said. "You talk about pain without ever sitting in it." Bill answered, calm but unyielding. "And this is why people question people like you. You sit in pain and never leave." A few audience members audibly gasped. Meghan's hands dropped to her sides, her shoulders squared. "That's enough," she said quietly. Bill blinked. "Enough of what?" "Enough of this," she replied. This condescension dressed up as curiosity. Bill nodded slowly. "If that's how you feel, we can move on." She laughed bitterly. "You don't get to control the damage and then call for calm." Bill leaned forward again. "Then tell me what you want." Meghan stared at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, "I want accountability." Bill's voice was steady. "From whom?" Her answer came fast. "From people who profit off tearing others down." Bill didn't miss a beat. "Including yourself?" The studio froze. Meghan's mouth opened, then closed. Her chest rose and fell. She looked away, just for a second. When she looked back, something had changed. This wasn't debate anymore. This was a decision forming. "You know what?" she said, standing just enough that her chair shifted audibly. "I'm done being dissected for sport." Bill looked up at her, calm. "No one's forcing you to stay." She met his gaze, eyes blazing. "I know." The red light above the camera stayed on. The moment Meghan stood fully, the studio felt smaller, not because of her height, because of the gravity. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, just enough to be heard, not enough to interrupt the broadcast. Bill didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look surprised. He simply watched her the way someone watches a storm they saw forming miles away. "This is exactly what I mean," Bill said calmly, his tone almost regretful. "When the questions stop being flattering, you leave." Meghan turned toward him slowly. Her smile was gone now. No performance left to protect. "You didn't ask questions," she said. "You staged an ambush." Bill tilted his head. "You've been interviewed by better." That landed harder than any insult. The audience murmured again, this time uncertain, divided, tense. Some faces showed sympathy. Others showed exhaustion. Meghan gestured toward the cameras. "This is what people don't see. The constant baiting, the rewriting of motives, the assumption that if a woman speaks passionately, she must be manipulating something." Bill responded evenly. "Or maybe, just maybe, people are reacting to patterns." Her jaw tightened. "You keep saying people as if you're not leading them." Bill didn't deny it. "I ask questions out loud that others are thinking silently." Meghan let out a sharp laugh. "And you call that bravery?" Bill answered. "I call it honesty." She stepped away from her chair now, standing between it and the camera, no longer a guest, no longer seated, no longer playing along. "You want honesty?" she said. "Fine." Bill nodded. "Please." Meghan's voice lowered, controlled, but vibrating underneath. "You don't like me because I don't fit neatly into your worldview. I don't behave the way women are supposed to behave when they talk about trauma. I don't apologize enough. I don't stay grateful. And that bothers people like you." Bill inhaled slowly, then replied with surgical calm. "No. What bothers me is when accountability gets replaced with accusation." She shook her head. "You've decided who I am." Bill replied. "You've decided who disagrees with you." The producer's voice cut in again, more urgent now. "We're running long, wrap if needed." Bill ignored it. "So, let me ask you one last thing," he said. "If you're always misunderstood, always attacked, always the victim, at what point do you consider the possibility that you're contributing to the friction?" The silence afterward was brutal. Meghan stared at him, not blinking, not smiling, not deflecting. Then she said very quietly, "That question is the problem." Bill leaned back slightly. "Because it suggests agency?" "Because it suggests blame," she shot back. Bill replied, "Because it suggests responsibility." Her breath hitched, not visibly but audibly enough that the microphones caught it. "This is why people like you are dangerous," she said. "You dress judgment up as reason." Bill looked directly into the camera now, not at her. "And this is why conversations end when emotions replace answers." That was it. Meghan stepped back, one hand lifting instinctively as if to stop something. But there was nothing left to stop. "I'm not doing this anymore," she said. "I didn't come here to be lectured." Bill looked up at her. "You came here to be challenged." She shook her head. "No, I came here to speak," Bill replied. "And you did." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned toward the exit. The audience reacted immediately. Some gasps, some applause, some stunned silence. A few people stood. Others stayed seated, unsure whether to clap or watch. Bill remained seated. "Meghan," he said, not raising his voice. "You're welcome to stay." She stopped, but didn't turn around. "I don't need permission," she said. Then she walked. The camera followed her just long enough to catch the door closing behind her. Not slammed, not dramatic. Final. The studio sat in stunned quiet. Bill exhaled slowly, then turned back toward the camera. "Well," he said evenly, "that's one way to end a conversation." A nervous laugh rippled through the audience. Bill adjusted his posture, expression composed, but eyes sharper now. "This is why dialogue matters," he continued. "Not comfort, not applause, dialogue." He paused. "And sometimes," he added, "walking away says more than staying ever could." The red light dimmed, the credits began to roll, and by the time the broadcast ended, social media was already on fire. Some calling Meghan brave, others calling her evasive, many replaying the same final exchange over and over again. Not because of what was said, but because of who refused to hear the answer. Some conversations don't end with answers, they end with a walkout. If you enjoy high-tension interviews and real-time confrontations like this one, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next moment when everything goes off script.